Hey everybody, thank you very much for joining us for the fifth Percussion Community webinar this season. My name is Caleb Rothy. I'm the Percussion Education Coordinator for WGI, and I'm very excited to share that our special guest this evening is Mike Jackson. Mike is the Program Coordinator and Designer at Broken City. You may also know him from many years of work with Mission Viejo High School, also teaches a number of other groups around Southern California area. Mike, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks, Caleb.
So everybody, we're going to dive into a couple of conversations this evening. We're going to talk to Mike a little bit about creativity. We're going to talk about ensemble management. We're going to talk a little bit about programming and inspiration and all sorts of things like that. But we really do believe that these conversations are best when everybody that's online with us tonight gets involved. So for those that are tuning in live tonight, whenever you have a question, please do use the question field and the little tool here in the interface to go ahead and type out a question. Mike and I will make sure that we get to as many of those as we possibly can. And I do want to mention that there's no reason to wait on that. If there's something on your mind already that you know you want to pick Mike's brain on, or if you've got a question for me about the upcoming WGI World Championships or something like that, you can type them out right now and kind of get a head start on that. The first ones into the queue are usually the ones that we're guaranteed to get to first. So definitely jump in there once something kind of comes to mind. All right, Mike, I kind of want to start off a little bit with you giving us a little kind of a quick rundown of your bio and your history in the activity, because I know you've been doing this for a really long time and have a lot of longevity. So for those that may not be familiar with the whole history of your work, can you kind of give us a quick little rundown?
Sure. Yeah, I played marching percussion in high school, marched 4 years of drum corps. I had the unique, I was fortunate, I guess, to start teaching at the high school that I graduated from. And I had free reign. I was setting the line, I was running the lot book, the warm-up routines. I was writing the shows, and it's a pretty, I look back on it, it was a pretty strange situation to have an 18-year-old in charge of the creative direction of a high school program. It was a small school. It wasn't what's going on nowadays with WGI, but for a band director to take an 18-year-old and say, here, do what you want with it, I think is probably how I ended up where I am now. I had access to musicians that would play my stuff, and I had an opportunity to experiment and see what doesn't work, and then what works for me. A lot of years of figuring that stuff out. Ended up teaching Mission Viejo with Jim Wunderlich in 1989. We took that program over because our previous instructor had moved to a different state. By the way, that was Steve Yates, who's now in, I guess he will live on with the legacy of the Gods of Quads. What year was that?
90.
I don't remember what year that was. Oh my God, it was in the 90s. 99, 2000. Anyway, look him up, Steve Yates. But super interesting situation. Looking back on it, back then it was just life. I was just living it. Jim and I kind of created this compositional teamwork, a tag team. Didn't really have a formula as to how we went about things. We just kind of approached each year as its own unique thing. No formal training. I did not go to school for that. Jim did not either. And somehow we ended up, fast forward, I'm at Vanguard, he's at Blue Devils. And obviously he stayed at Blue Devils up until this year. And I moved around a bit, taught at Blue Coats for a while, and now I'm at Blue Knights. As far as the indoor activity, teaching Mission Viejo all those years, we were there for, as a team, I think we were there for 24 years, maybe 23 years. And then I stayed an extra 3 years. I think I'd put in 26 years before I retired from Mission. Um, but yeah, it was my life. I mean, it was my family, my it definitely shaped who I am. Um, but that's sort of the background. I guess as how that bleeds into the independent world. I taught a small group in 2000, oh geez, 2002, 2003, Black Knights, um, and started working at RCC in 2004. I stayed there for 10 years. I started uh, working at OCI, which later became Broken City. I'm sure we'll talk about that later, in 2014. So 2013 was my last year with RCC. And yeah, I think that's pretty much the bio of how I ended up where I am. I know there's a lot of intricate details I kind of skipped over, but um, that's the basic pathway of what led here.
That's awesome. And what was your first year taking a group to WGI World Championships?
96, Mission Viejo 96. And it's worth noting we had band uniforms, shakos, and no floor. A funny story about that. Our color guard was there as well, and we had gotten there, performed at prelims, and we realized that we were out of our element. SoCal was not prepared, or did not prepare groups for the national experience. And we found out real quickly. So we ditched the shakos the next night, and we asked the color guard if we could borrow their floor, just so we'd have something. It was a bright red floor. And so we thought, all right, this will be way better. No shakos, we'll have a floor. So we get out there to perform. We had written our drill to a basketball court. And the floor, I think, was like 70 feet wide. So we were marching like a good 20 feet off the edge of the floor. It was like the floor didn't even need to be there. But I mean, I laugh about it now. It was kind of a big deal. But yeah, it was a mess. And that was exactly why, I'm sure we'll talk about this as well, why we came home. We said, we got to do something. Let's start this new thing, SCPA, because our groups are not prepared, and we don't want anyone to go through what we just went through. Because I think, who was it? North Glen and who was there that first year? I want to say King Philip was there, Mystique, of course, and the Independent, Blue Knights, and Julie's line, Overton, John Overton.
Overton.
Yeah, and they were just like killer productions, and just everybody was drumming and just had this very theatrical delivery. And I don't know what we were doing. We're just playing some cool music we found, like wandering around the floor. But yeah, anyway, long answer, 96. That's my answer.
Well, I'm going to say I think that feels pretty appropriate for 1996. I remember
Yeah.
having a similar experience in 97. Like, just bring this ragtag group of we have no idea what we're doing, and then you see North Glen on the floor, and you're like, oh, that's what we're supposed to be doing. Okay.
Right.
So you're in good company. I think we were all kind of there in the mid and late 90s.
Yeah.
I want to fast forward a little bit and talk about your current project, which is Broken City. I find it a fascinating kind of case study of the activity, especially right now with how the activity's evolved. So I kind of want to start with this. You already mentioned when you got involved with Broken City. They were OCI at the time. So I kind of want to find out how you got involved and find out from you what the origin story was for the rebranding of the performing group.
Yeah, I think in order to get just a real accurate context, I would have to back up even further with my departure from RCC. Um, that program is so intense, and they're so at the top of their game, and there were so many of us, and um, I felt like that there was room for other creative directions rather than staying with such a large team. So I totally enjoyed my time there. I wouldn't trade it for anything. I loved it. I love everybody there, and I was like, this. Let me try something. I just want to try something. So that's sort of what it was, and that's what kind of started this whole thing of just a lot of philosophical, like challenging myself, like what is this thing that we're doing? Why do we spend so much time doing it? Is it a waste of time? Is it just drums in a gym? We all make that joke, and and the truth is that the clock's ticking on all of us. Um, this is how we choose to spend our time, so it must be important. So I wanted to explore that, and I didn't feel like it was fair to explore that with other people relying on me to get my job done. So like if I'm gonna screw this up, I'm gonna screw it up by myself, and I'm not gonna take a ship down with me. You know what I mean? And like that just was not gonna happen because I think that RCC had already gone through that. They already established what they're about, what they stand for, and they had all that infrastructure in place. Um, and there was no time to be messing around, you know, doing donuts in the parking lot with the program. And I kind of wanted to do that, so that's why I initially took position at OCI, which actually didn't involve programming at all. Um, I was supposed to come in and just do the visual program, and not the overall. And somehow it I ended up doing everything as far as programming the music. I worked with Brian Dinkle. I don't want to say I did everything, but I ended up having my hand in everything, um, like music selection, uh, creative direction, concept, all that kind of stuff, um, auditions, like everything, and making the decision to go world class because OCI had been open at that time. Um, this was the start of this kind of churning of what is now Broken City, and it was all experimentation, uh, trying developing relationships with other staff people that I've never worked with before. Um, that was part of it, and seeing who those people are, where things just fire on all cylinders and everything works. Um, it's a little bit of experimentation there. The following year, uh, this was 15, is where I really started rekindling a relationship I had with Adam Watts. I had known Adam since he went to Mission. He graduated in '94. Actually went to school and drummed at the same time as Roger Carter and Jeff Queen that were both in that drum line. Um, so there's a little trivia, like Adam Watts, Roger Carter, and Jeff Queen all in the same drum line. Um, and we've been friends forever, but we really started hanging out a lot, like at least once a week, and just like hanging out and forgetting to eat, like that. Those kind of conversations where I get there around 11 a.m. and we blink and it's 9 p.m. and we didn't have lunch, we didn't have dinner. Crazy stuff, just talking about just different life things and philosophies and approaches and teaching, um, different art forms and why they are the way they are. And I started thinking about what if we took all of these ideas, all the things that Adam had already implemented in his world. So what if we took this concept, these things that we seem to be on a parallel path here. what if we took this and just merged it, and we applied all of these ideas to a percussion ensemble? Like, what does a percussion ensemble look like if you filter it through these ideas? And there was a little hint of that in 2015. That was the Bloom year, first year of Bloom, and the first year working with Kevin Shaw. Um, and I kind of I had to convince Kevin to come try this out. Like, let's see what happens. And um, it was a good year, but we learned a lot. Um, and we didn't make finals that year, which was definitely one of those things where I'll revert back to the RCC comment. Like you just can't do things like that if not everyone's on board, and um, it's too risky with an organization that's that established. You know what I mean? You know, like IBM is not going to go try new things.
Right,
You know,
right.
it's not a garage startup company. So that was the whole thing. Is like, here we are. This is what a garage startup company does. It fails sometimes, and not that not making finals is failing, but it's certainly not where we wanted to be. Um, and that's where we kind of sat back and um, talked about, all right, if we're going to do this, we can't dip our foot in the pool. We got to do it full out. So that's when I had the serious conversation with Adam and said, you know, here's the vision, because he had been involved in 15 that year that we didn't make finals. He was involved, but just a little bit, and we were kind of on the same page with a lot of things. But in 2016, this is the first year of Broken City and the year we played Cage. Um, it was more of a deliberate, calculated thing. Um, like, we don't know what this is going to look like, and we don't know where it's going to end up. We just know that the process is going to follow these parameters. Like, we basically created our own shoot, if you will, and we stuck to the plan and rebranded everything. And you know, Sean Cunningham, who's the director and the basically the owner of the physical assets of this organization, OCI, was super understanding and cool about the whole thing. And basically, when I came to him and said, so this is kind of a weird thing that we're suggesting to do here, because there's intellectual property and branding and copyrights and logos and trademarks and things that are property of Broken City artists, which is Adam's company. And then there's the physical assets of the organization, the truck, the pit equipment, the sound system. So it was a little complicated to try to figure everything out and make sure that nobody was stepping on each other's toes. But Sean gave us the green light, said, go for it. Let's do it. So we left the OCI moniker behind, rebranded as Broken City, and basically taking charge of all the aesthetics and to add to the confusion, we actually, I say we, but Sean actually started another OCI program in open class to continue the name while we continued on as Broken City. So there's some complexity there that I'm sure that confused a lot of people, especially because there's another OCI in Oregon. So fast forward another year, and that OCI organization is now Vessel. So even more complexity. But all of these things were happening, I think, for good organic reasons. You know, it's not a marketing ploy. It's like, this is, like, I spent a lot of time doing this stuff, so I want it to mean something beyond just scores on the recap. And I want it to be part of something that I believe in outside of percussion, just approach and why we do things, why we spend all our time doing stuff like this, and even outside percussion, but just why do humans in general find these passion projects and devote so much time and effort to it when from an outsider standpoint there's little to no reward. So we must be being fulfilled some way, and so trying to explore that. And not sure if I gave you a specific answer to your question, but I certainly gave you all the context of how it came to be and why it is a little confusing sometimes just on the surface.
No, I think it's great, and I think you've actually even kind of touched on the next question that I had at least a little bit. So maybe I'll kind of approach it from a slightly different angle. But I find myself really fascinated by that. I think if I could speak a little bit more generally for the activity, it felt like Broken City kind of came out of nowhere in 2016 because there was a new name, and it felt like the ensemble was just like, hey, we've never heard of these guys. And I think the group placed third that year. So from out of finals the previous year to third in Independent World that next year. And so a lot of people kind of like look at that as the beginning and they go, okay, 2016, 2017, and I know there's a lot of anticipation for 2018 this season as well. But for me, like I kind of trace it back that 1 year further when you started with Bloom. To me, it seems like there's a really distinctive identity about the ensemble. I think about, maybe some of the music selection, the thematic material that you pick. It's just very specific about the group. Like you wouldn't mistake it for any one of the other groups that are out there right now. And we have a lot of groups that have a very strong distinctive identity at the top end of the activity. But I'm wondering specifically for Broken City whether that distinctive and strong identity was intentional or something that kind of just happened organically. And I'm wondering where that came from.
Hmm. Well, I want to respond to something that you touched on a little bit when you said that it came out of nowhere and where did that come from? What's funny to me is that it was the same people doing the same things they've always done. I think back, I'd say I had an epiphany of like a really focused intent on like my own personal philosophy, probably in 2005, I want to say. So just being myself, I can look at pre-2005 and know that I was fishing. And from 2005 onward, I knew what I was attempting to do. Like I had direction, I had focus. And so what we're doing now, it's exactly the same thing I was doing in 06 by the time I had I was at Vanguard. And I think what the difference is that it's that same collection of people, like Kevin and everybody involved in the creative process, same collection of people doing the stuff that they've always done with focus and an uncompromising like spirit, and less distractions, caring more. It's like, how would that look? You can ask yourself this with anything. How would that look, or how would that feel, or how would that sound if you cared more? And it's an interesting like self-challenge filter to run things through. And don't compromise when you have a sense of a vision, and we're really good about that. I think it's just a combination of personalities that we all work together. If somebody has a vision about something, like no, like I know this isn't working right now, but here's what it's supposed to be. We're really careful not to get into the design by committee, which is really common. And I think that's what I mean by compromise. Everybody compromises, and then there's no vision. That makes sense.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I know I'm kind of all over the place. I'm just trying to, um, you know, not every uh, action or event or historical event it doesn't fit neatly into a box. There's no black and white answer. Um, but I think that's just how I see it. Like I look at the people I work with right now, especially the people I worked with for a long time, like Veronica and Kevin Shaw and um, I mean the whole team. I don't want to start naming names because I'm gonna forget somebody. But Roger Carter, I mean, like God, I've known him since he was in high school. Um, we actually drummed in Kingsman together in 1989. Um, Crazy. So um, it's it's just all of us doing what we've always done. It's more focus and like we talk about the why. Like here's how we do things. Why? And then sometimes we discover, well, we shouldn't be doing it that way because the why doesn't make sense, or there is no why, or I can't come up with a why that justifies why we do that. So let's let's rebuild the pathway of how we got there and see what we come up with. So there's a lot of that going on. Um, and I don't know, did I answer the question? Kind of all over the
Yeah,
place, but
I think so. I think one of the things I was curious about was whether or not you at some point sat down and said, here's the vision and the identity for this ensemble or the kind of direction that we're going to take these shows.
absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah,
that
and
that
it feels like it was totally intentional, but is also something that has grown organically as the team has worked together and
yeah.
said, what about this? I have an idea for
Well, like yeah,
this. Does this
and
fit?
I guess I'll get less abstract with my answers too, because I think there's definitely things that happen. Like we have to be. It's not just being believable, but being like genuine. So the fact that we can be perceived as believable doesn't necessarily mean we're genuine. So I wanted both, and let's do things that are genuine to us, and nothing's contrived. Let's not be afraid to do things that are unproven. Let's not be afraid to make the wrong decisions, uh, and let's see what happens. And I gotta say, man, that the kids that stuck around after 14 and 15, amazing. But the kids who showed up for auditions in 16, because we didn't announce any of this until after we set the line. So that line that you saw for Cage was they auditioned for OCI, and then at the end of auditions, we sat everybody down and we explained to them what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it's kind of a weird memory too, because I remember sitting in a theater talking to 40 kids, and there was zero reaction. It was one of those like you tell a joke, they just sat there. I'm like, I went home that night going, oh man, they're all gonna quit tomorrow. And it's funny. As soon as I got home, I'm not like huge on social media, so people were calling me saying, "Dude, you got to check this out! Like it's blowing up. Like kids are talking about it." And I was laughing because you know, they basically tortured me by being silent when I announced it. But it turned out, 24 hours later, that you could definitely have a little window into their excitement about it. Um, and it's cool. And Adam, I think Adam had just finished writing his book at that point, and I hope I'm remembering the chronology here properly. But Adam had been working on a book which has all of these philosophical things in them, as far as like uh, the parallel path I referred to earlier. And he gave everybody at auditions a copy of his book, and it's super cool.
That's awesome. You mentioned something a couple minutes ago. You were talking about talking about why a lot as a staff, and just discussing this concept of, yeah, we can do something, but let's really wrestle with why are we doing that? Why are we doing it this way? Does it fit with that whole idea? So I'm sure it'll come as no surprise to you, but many regard a lot of the shows that you're doing with Broken City now. But even if we go back historically at some of my favorite shows that you've had a hand in putting together over the years, a lot of the programs that you bring to the floor are deep and multi-layered, and there's a whole lot that you can get out of it. And it's something that usually, it takes several viewings to start kind of pulling away the layers. Sometimes fairly esoteric in the form that the shows take. I'm wondering, from your perspective, how much of the programs that you put together, maybe we just kind of deal with Broken City over the last couple of years, how much of what you put together is for you, or you as the staff members and the designers of the group, and how much of it is for the audience? Like, how much do you want people to be able to identify and read all the things that you're putting together in the show?
That's a tough one. There's some I don't want to avoid the tough question here, because I think it's important, and I think we need to get rid of the stigma of doing shows for yourselves. But it's actually, I do this for me, because that, I don't want to sound trite here, but that gift of myself that's for the members. So whether the show is terrible, we don't make finals, or it's the best show that kid has ever marched, whatever the situation may be, at least they know that they got me. I gave them myself, right? And like, it's just my personal philosophy. I think they have to know that. Like our membership has to know that I bled on this thing, and here it is. And that to me is important. I don't think you can get that if I don't do it for me. And it creates almost like a feedback loop with the kids, because once I get their response and I see that they're excited, I want more of that. And so I'm looking to do things that I'm happy with, that fulfill me, but also like, oh, they're gonna love this, or I hope they love this, or oh, I don't know if they're gonna love this. There's all of that. Like, I want that feedback, and then when I get that feedback, it sort of changes me. Like, I like to ask the either the members or the staff, like, what are they good at? What can they do? And then sometimes they give me this, big laundry list of stuff, like, oh, here's all the things they can do, and they're really good at this. Some of it I toss. I'm like, there's no way I can fit that into the show. And then there's other things I see. I'm like, you know what? I've been looking for a way to make this sound or to do this. I'm going to use that, which I would not have come up with on my own. It's definitely driven. It's performer driven. So all that kind of stuff is happening, and it changes the way I think, like as a composer. I guess it'd be like, someone just introduces a new instrument, and it's like, hey, here's this new instrument. Can you find a spot for it? Maybe. And then when I do, it's appropriate. Like, I make sure it's not contrived and stuck there. But so now you've got this dual layer thing going on, where I do it for myself, and I of course want my team to be happy. Like, Kevin being fulfilled and enjoying the process is super important to me. I think that's like that thing that we have to keep breathing, the relationship that we have, and that's a concern. Or I should say it's an awareness, not a concern. And then the members. So then where does the audience come in? I don't know if they do. I think I think that's a weird thing to say, and it's not, you can kind of blow it up into something that it isn't, like it's something disrespectful, but it's more of this show that we're doing is not for everyone, and you may not like it, and you may not get it, but aren't you glad it's there? Do you want everybody looking the same? Everybody sounding the same? Every single show that comes out pushes all of your buttons? Or do we have um, that um, individuality that we have just in regular life? Like, here's a good analogy. Like, and I've answered this question before with to some friends of mine. But if you think about everybody you know in your life, not all at once, but just pick, 3 or 4 random people, maybe a colleague at work, a cousin, a student, they're completely different on every level. You don't have any associates or friends or acquaintances that are exactly the same. And I feel like if everyone embraced their individuality through the creative process and through the teaching process, that's what this activity would look like every year, and it would be amazing. And it's my opinion that if everyone is thinking about pleasing the audience, all that goes away, and we have a homogenized yuck. That's pretty subjective, but that's how I feel. If all of us are just thinking about the audience, I think that's where it leads, and maybe not, to the extreme, but it leans that way enough for it to not fulfill its potential as this beautiful, amazing activity that still to this day I can't categorize it. It's just this weird niche, and I love it. And I hope um, uh, I hope all of us realize how fragile it can be, and we take care of it.
Yeah, agreed. One of my favorite things about the activity is I can't explain it to people that are not in the activity. My day job is not in this world at all, and when my colleagues say, "What is this thing that seems to take up so much of your time and all of your weekends and every waking hour away from the regular day job?" I can't explain it other than to say, "You got to come to a show. I can play you a video. You'll kind of get an idea, but you got to come see this thing live because it's amazing." And I totally agree with you. I want to take what you said, Mike, about not necessarily designing for the audience. I want to take that a step further and say how important it is to make sure that nobody's walking through a process where you're specifically designing for the judging attribute in our activity. I think nothing says homogenization as clearly as everybody going, what will please the 4 people that are sitting up there or the 8 people that are sitting up there? And so I think when we
That's
go the
funny.
opposite direction, we say, yeah, go
I'm
ahead.
laughing right now. I'm laughing right now because not once did I even think about the judges.
I know.
Like when you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, we have judges,
Yeah. And I'll share for
which
everybody
is
that's
kind of
tuning in,
cool.
Mike
Like,
and I have known each other for a long time. So we've had these conversations for years, probably like, I don't know, we're probably coming up on 20 years. And it's so funny because Mike never thinks about the judges, never talks about the judges. It's so far removed
I
from the
do,
process. When I
I
talk to
do,
other
just not
people,
in the design process, right?
yeah, when I talk, right. When I talk to other people or I'm out doing a clinic somewhere, I hear this undercurrent of all these people saying, well, we designed that, basically for the judges, or we knew that they were going to be looking for blanks, so we tried to make sure that was in the show. And I always find that my favorite shows, the ones that move me the most, the ones that inspire me the most or generate the strongest reaction for me, are the ones that are clearly just about artistic pursuit or clearly about bringing a vision to life, or they've got a message or a meaning or something like that. And you can tell it's totally separate from the sheets. They still do all of the things that are on the sheets. There's still all sorts of ways that you can credit it, but there's like a pureness to the vision that I find to be really fantastic. And I think Mike's muse is to find that pureness in your own idea, your own vision for it, the work that you do with the staff, and then to let that kind of resonate and ripple out from there. And I know other people do the exact same thing, and they go, hey, I want to give the audience this experience, or I want to take them on a ride, or whatever that journey is going to be. And they design from that standpoint, and that allows them to be very pure and authentic. And I think that's where the sweet spot of that is.
Right.
One other thing I want to respond to, sorry, Mike, and then you can jump in,
Okay.
is
Okay.
a couple of minutes ago, you were talking about being really invested in the program. Like that's how you are vulnerable to the performers in your ensemble. You wear your heart on the sleeve and say, hey, everybody that's in the ensemble this year, I'm pouring everything that I have into this show. I'm trying to build you the most amazing show that I can. And I think that that's such huge advice for everybody that's watching tonight, not only from a design perspective, but especially from a teaching perspective. When you show that to the students that are in your ensemble, when you show them how much you have invested into this, when you show your passion and intensity for the thing that you're trying to bring to life, that's where buy-in comes from. That's where ensembles really meld and start to move forward. And I think as an educator, there's no greater thing that we can do than to show, not tell, but show all of the performers standing in front of us or the students standing in front of us how much we're investing in them so they become invested in it as well. All right.
Yeah.
So, Mike, we got a couple questions that came in. So I want
Can
to
I,
go ahead.
I want to, can I
Yeah,
back
go
up
ahead.
real quick and I want to clarify one thing. I don't want anything taken out of context. It's okay if you design for the audience, if that's your thing. So I don't want to say that that's wrong. It's not wrong to do anything. It would be wrong for all of us to accept that there's one way to design, and that is thinking about the audience. So the only thing I'd like to add to that is it's fine if you design for the audience, but you would have to accept that, like, if you plant an apple seed, don't expect oranges on the tree. Like, you're gonna get what you plant. So I'm not sure if what we just have to make sure that, like, if we design a certain way, you're gonna get a result that stems from the way you design that. And sometimes there's happy accidents, but um, uh, I guess I would hope that everybody in a design situation would make sure they reach down deep and ask themselves the tough questions, like, what do you want out of this? What's the point? What's the purpose? And then if the honest answer is, I want excellence, achievement, I want the highest score in the activity, I want the audience on their feet, there's nothing wrong with that. That's awesome. And those groups that approach the activity that way actually create a standard for everyone else, which is important, because you can't just have a bunch of artsy garbage out there, right?
Right.
At some point, that the magic is when the artfulness is met with excellence and achievement. So it's just this balancing act, and like a little drop of this and a little drop of that. So I just want to make sure I wasn't taken out of context, like I was saying that those are the wrong way. It's just, be honest with yourself. If that's how you're wired, then you should do that. Because if you try something else, it's not going to be good, because it's not natural to you.
Definitely agree, 100%. Hey, we had a couple questions that came in. One person just remarked the quote that you had earlier of what would that sound like if you cared more, was music to their ears and really a mind-blowing statement. So I just wanted to give you some kudos for that and make sure that you knew that was resonating with people. I also thought that was fantastic. So definitely something worth remembering as you walk away, everybody. Brock had this question for you, Mike. He said, why the name Broken City? Is it more an appropriation with the area the group is based in, or is it more so for a certain aesthetic? Talk to us a little bit about why that name specifically. And I'm smiling because I already know the answer to this, but it's a good one.
I'm not even sure I know the answer to this. This would be a great question for Adam. Adam had started Broken City Artists with his friend Gannon Arnold, who's also my friend. Um, and I think it was a little bit of like you can take it either way. You can take it like it's a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of setting yourself apart um, from trying to be a part of the machine. And Adam dealt a lot with the music industry, production and dealing with artists and managers and whatnot. And that city's pretty broken, or it can be. And I'm sure it's not unlike Hollywood. Um, and I think a lot of people would agree that there's a brokenness to that, depending on what side of the decimal your paycheck is on. Um, but I take it two different ways. I take it as we are accepting ourselves as being broken. Like this city's broken. It's not Los Angeles. It's not New York. It's the city's broken. It's not this um, polished machine that functions without error. Um, and it's a little bit of a shout out to just being human. But there's also, um, like I said, a little bit of a sarcastic nature to it, like, that we're just accepting our flaws, or not wanting to associate with uh, the slickness of something like the music industry. Um, like turn on, The Voice or America's Got Talent, and there's just uh, this canned kind of. You're smiling because you know exactly what I'm talking about,
Yeah.
and I'm trying to be nice, but at the same time, we all know what it is, and we all know what we're going to get. It's like when I said earlier about planting apple seeds and expecting something different. Like you know when you turn those shows on, you know what you're going to get. That's totally fine, and you could be entertained by it. I'm not saying they're bad shows, but it's like representative of this industry that, well, what if you don't want to be a part of that industry, but you still want to do the art? And this is the broken version of that. This is Broken City. I'm speaking on behalf of Adam a little bit because I did not come up with the name, but these are the things that I think of when I think about the name. And I loved it the minute I heard it. And um, Adam being a part of the team and wanting to see what all of our discussions over the years, he wanted to see that come to fruition with, here, this is what a percussion ensemble looks like when it's birthed from these ideas.
That's
So
awesome.
that's what it means to me. It can mean anything to anybody else, but that's sort of what it means.
Let's see. Next question. Himanshu was wondering. He said earlier you mentioned that you don't have any formal training to be an educator. He's wondering if you always knew that you wanted to design for the performing arts, or if it's something that kind of evolved over time. And then kind of asked the second question: when did this become your full-time job rather than just this thing you were doing and playing around with?
Man, I wanted to be second baseman for the Angels. That's what I wanted to be. I was a baseball player since I was 5 years old. Something happened when I got into high school. I'm not sure what it was. It could have just been like a logistical thing. Like I just didn't sign up. Um, I played guitar, bass guitar, at 10 years old. I had my own bass, and I wanted to make my own recordings. It's funny, Dave Grohl has a story that he tells how he used to have two tape decks and he used to record the drums, and then he'd take that tape, put it in the other tape deck, press play, and then he'd press record on this one, play guitar. So now he's got guitar and drums, and you just keep swapping the tapes until you have a full band. And when I heard him tell that story, I was like, "Guy, you stole my story. That's my story," because that's what I did. I had two tape decks, and this was what, 1983, I think, 1982, 1983 when I started doing this. In this room, actually, I'm at my mom's house right now, but um, right in that corner, right over there, I just started making tapes, and um, I started playing drums because I had to. If I wanted drums on my tapes, I had to play drums. And then I ended up in marching band, and actually, I didn't want to be in marching band. I wanted to play drum set for the jazz band, and the band director said, "You're not allowed to unless you're in the marching band." So I did that. I didn't want to flip burgers, so I just started teaching these drum lines in the district um, for like $100 a month or something ridiculous like that. Um, I was going to school, college, uh, community college, and I wasn't studying music. I was doing I was really into astronomy, and um, I took several philosophy courses and some other GE stuff, and um, I had a weird situation at home where uh, my brother and sister were sharing a bedroom, and they were a lot younger than me, and I felt like, man, I need to move out so they could have their own rooms. So I had this like little bit of pressure that I put on myself. I mean, nobody was telling me to move out, but I put that on myself. I'm like, so I'm gonna move out. Once I did that, it was sort of game over on college, because now I had rent, and I just started teaching more. And like, hey, these guys are willing to pay me this, and my drum line did well last year, so these guys are offering me to write their book. And man, I blinked, and you know, I'm 47, so I don't know. I never sought out a career in this. I feel like even in the last couple of years, I've sort of reinvented myself on like how I make ends meet, where my income comes from. Um, it's very common in Southern California to teach like, a million high schools and make ends meet that way. And I find myself, I teach one high school now, which I can't believe I made that happen. Um, Really an accidental career. I don't know, you know, if this is going to be forever. Maybe I'll find something else that fulfills me. But man, it's a, it's really like teaching is this weird thing. And I think if you teach history or English or math, it's, it's probably the same feeling, I would imagine, that like nobody can just change the world with, a stroke of a pen, at least not from the beginning. But you can change or you can have an effect on the world like 30 kids at a time in your small little classroom once a semester or once a year. And I think there's got to be something to that of I'm not sure that that's it, but I think that has a lot to do with it, is that there must be this thing that I've subconsciously known about my whole life that, hey, I'm affecting 30 kids at a time. And that's pretty cool. And I think that must be pretty standard for any type of teacher of anything. Um, and in the early years, I was technically teaching, but I feel like I was the student. Like every year, I would learn uh, how to teach certain personalities. And I'm sure you're a teacher. You know how that is. You get to a point where you think you've seen everything. Like I've seen every type of kid. Oh, you're one of those. I have the handbook on you. I know how to deal with you. You know. Um, and those situations where you encounter a kid that you've never seen before is pretty rare now. Um, so I think I know that's a really gray answer to that question, but I never sat down and thought. There's no point where I said this is a career. it just opportunities show up, and um, it's I think it's sort of a career when you turn down more gigs than you accept. I think is maybe the turning point. Um, Maybe that's when I started to feel a little like a grown up. Um, as much as I kicked and screamed, and not wanting to be a grown up, uh, I think that possibly is the turning point where you start thinking about, hey, this must be like, this is it. This is why I was put on the earth, and I'm going to continue doing it. So.
I've got one more question that's come in that I want to share with you, and then we'll kind of pivot a little bit. This is a tough one. So Lawrence is going to ask a small question that is actually a big concept, but I'm wondering if you can give him a little bit of feedback. Lawrence is wondering this: what would you recommend for teaching beginners in marching percussion? And I know we could talk for hours and hours and hours about that, but if you could reflect a little bit, maybe on some of your experiences back in the day when you started out doing this, or things that you've picked up over the years, what do you think are some of the really important things for a young instructor to know about teaching beginners in marching percussion?
Uh, I almost feel like this is a question that I couldn't answer even 10 years ago. I feel like I've had, uh, somewhat of a epiphany to how to get kids like to open their eyes and go, oh, I get it. I think um, in the early days, I was so focused on just the routine. Like, here's how you hold the stick. Here's how you play the drum. Let's do this. Here we go. Let's do this 15 more times. You're writing the lesson on the board. So you're going very like textbook. Um, and that method definitely works. Um, but the older I got, the more I was just tired of, like, this is not fun. I don't want to do this. So I started thinking of ways that I could get in touch with kids more at a young, maybe intro level, like they've never touched sticks before. And I think if I had to give like one black and white answer, it's take things that are natural just in life, like that are inherent to who we are as humans, and tap into those. It's like one of the things I talk about is um, hand a baby a rattle and watch what the baby does with the rattle. There's a primal instinctual motion that somehow, at least my experience when I was growing up, um, we undo that. We shouldn't undo that. We should tap into that. Like the baby doesn't, have wrist action and finger use. It's like primal forearm, every muscle's moving, and they're banging away with that rattle. Um, I would say that most people know how to use a hammer. Was anyone ever taught how to use a hammer? I can't remember ever being taught how to use a hammer. It's just you grab the hammer and you hit the nail. I've never seen anyone hammer anything like this, or like this. So all of these primal things were just sort of built in. You could even look at a way that we throw things, the way you would throw a ball or a boomerang or just a stick. That motion of throwing it's the same sort of primal thing. I think these are things that humans we just know how to do. And tapping into all of those things and getting kids to relate to that and not letting them think that there's some specific way to play drums. And I think that's why maybe I was drawn to drums, because it is so primal and instinctual. Maybe I didn't know it then, but maybe that's why. I think it's a different type of kid that plays drums as opposed to, flute, violin. I think we're wired differently. And I think tapping into that thing that clearly is there. Like if you like to hit things, and make noise. Um, Tap into the thing that's already there instead of trying to build and synthesize a technique. Um, that's the biggest thing, and that's the way I approach every um, beginner set. Even with marking time, we talk about we will rock you, like because you get kids marking time like they're trying to float on the ground. I'm like, think about something primal like we will rock you, stomping the feet, and then we just stomp back and forth left to right, and then ease up a little bit, like don't kill the floor, and then that's marking time. Like they get that, or make marking time feel like dancing, like you're grooving to the music. It shouldn't feel like some new skill. Like we already know how to do it. Just tap into it. So that's what I think is the easiest way to get kids to just like boom, okay, get it. And then of course, you have the more rudimental complexity. Um, it's not an oxymoron, um, but that comes later.
Yeah, it's phase two.
Hmm.
Hey, on that note, Daniel sent in a question, and he was wondering if you have any recommendations for inspiring participants and groups to strive to be their best. With the number of groups that you've worked with over the years and the amount of success that they've had, are there any go-tos that you use to try to inspire people to reach farther, to inspire your performers and your students to reach farther than they think they can on their own?
I guess some of it is what I already said about make it more important or care more. Um, the other thing is I especially we're getting to the close of the season right now, and just dealing with my high school trying to put the finishing touches on their program, reminding them how many hours that they've put into this already, and we're nearing the finish line, and that's when they're tired and they just it's over, it's almost over, um, but just having them reflect a little bit, like think about when auditions were, and in our case we had auditions in May of last year, and then we had the summer program, we had marching band, and we had all the training, we had the show development, all the hours spent rehearsing, and have them realize that that's not just rehearsal, and it's not just this year and this show and this program. This is your life. Like you're not getting those hours back. You just spent your life doing this. So can we make this worth it? I'm gonna borrow a quote right now, but like if we all accept that life is suffering, make the suffering worth it. And having that mindset of like you're at rehearsal for 3 hours. You're gonna be here no matter what. Um, so you might as well make it worth it. You might as well kill it for 3 hours. Otherwise, you just wasted 3 hours of your life, and there's no value in that. Um, so it's okay. Maybe here's another way I could answer that question. It's okay to stop rehearsing at rehearsal and bring everybody in and just talk to your kids. I think even I mean I forget to do that as many years I've been teaching, and I just did it a couple days ago. I brought everybody and in the middle of rehearsal, and we just talked about some conceptual things and some big picture things, and it seems like the kids make a human connection to you as the instructor as well, because you're kind of this distanced teacher, and you're pointing and you're giving directions, and everything's tends to be official, and there's all this protocol involved. But just to break down that wall every now and then, talk to them, I think they figure out that it's time well spent. They're with their friends. They're doing an activity they love, and that I think that creates an atmosphere where they're going to try harder, or they're going to care more. Um, I don't think you can artificially inject that in. I think it has to be built as part of the structure of your program. There has to be, well, this is subjective again, but there has to be a philosophical element to what you're doing. Otherwise, you're just cherry picking. Like everything is a pragmatic decision, and there's no root cause or a root pathway, you know?
I completely agree, and I love the idea of, you're here for 3 hours no matter what, and it's not just 3 hours clicking by on the clock. It's 3 hours of your life. So you are, while you're here, your life is happening. And how do you want to spend your life? What do you want? I love the idea of, if we go back to May from last year, this is a year, and let's say you're talking to a high school student. This was your sophomore year in high school. You're never doing your sophomore year over again. So what can we do that's going to make it worth it? What can we do that's going to maximize this experience? I think is incredibly valuable. I will just share from my own personal experience that exactly what Mike said about bringing it in and talking to your group is so incredibly valuable. I would get lost in this too because rehearsal is valuable time and I need to fix things and I need to adjust things and I need to give them the experience of doing it right over and over and over again. Um, and so it's easy to get lost in that, and it's easy to get lost in the, as Mike said, the cherry picking of fix this, do this, adjust this. But sometimes just bringing it together and stopping rehearsal for a second and putting the humanity back in what we're doing. Again, showing yourself to be vulnerable, talking about your motivation and why you're here, and maybe what is lacking from rehearsal from your perspective right now, and then picking your performers' minds and getting their thoughts and their feedback, getting them to open up a little bit, connects you at a much deeper level than just try it again. We're a little bit slow on this count and we're missing this step off and all that other kind of stuff. We had a question a little bit ago that said, hey, I've been trying to make a connection with my students and show them that I'm invested, and it doesn't seem to be working. They're not buying into it the way that I want them to. I don't have a secret for that other than every time I've ever tried to show who I am as a person, like my true character, beyond just my technical knowledge for the activity or music making or anything like that, that's where that connection has happened. And that's when they come back with twice the energy that they had before and twice the dedication and twice the commitment. So the more that we can do to meet them on the human level and invest in each other as people, the more successful you'll be with the outcome of those rehearsals. Hey, Mike, to jump back into Broken City for a second, Daniel sent in a question and was wondering if you could explain the Bloom trilogy, which I know is not a simple, small concept, but if you can kind of talk about it a little bit, at least in your mind, why you think of it as a trilogy and why it's presented that way. And then his second question is Broken City starting another trilogy with Fall being the first part of it, or is there no interaction with that concept? So what do you think?
Well, the first thing is the first show, Bloom, it was an island. It was an idea. It was a show. We got about maybe halfway through the design process of Cage, and I realized that this is a continuation of an idea. And I think probably about the halfway point of Cage, I was committed to considering this a trilogy. So it was not something that was thought of from day one. It wasn't like this masterful, um, foreseen, you know, 3 seasons worth of conceptual ideas. But it was pretty organic. Like it was, of course, with all of us, working together stylistically, there were a lot of similarities. The preferred, choices of aesthetic lent itself to feel like a trilogy. But like I said, it was about halfway through that came to light. As far as the subject matter, it could be different for everyone, and I don't want to tell you what it is, because I know especially the members. There's everyone has their own version of what that show meant to them. And I wouldn't want to, I'm never going to tell them they're wrong. You know, that's what that show was to you, and that's what it meant to you. What it meant to me to me, it was a lifetime. It was Bloom could be, um, also even with saying that it's just a lifetime, that could be an abstract lifetime. It could be, you know, maybe from, you know, 13 to 18 is a lifetime, and you know, from 35 to 45, that's like a different life for most people. Um, it could be that, or it could be a literal lifetime. It could be from birth to death. Um, but either way, Bloom is this birth coming into existence, and all of the challenges that you face um, in a life that's imperfect and flawed, and accepting who you are and the things that you can't control, like your hair color and so on, how tall you are, or it could be more abstract emotional things about yourself. And Cage was the, for me, the the barriers that we place on ourselves, um, which no one has anything to do with. It's all self-imposed um, restrictions and um, you know, impeding our own process and getting in the way. Uh, the limbic brain, like the lizard brain, stopping you because of fear and so on. Um, so that's what Cage was. And then, of course, we finally break out of Cage. Um, and from here, we're on our own, is the last quote. And the final um, act, if you will, is was all based on courage. And now that you're on your own and you don't have anything in your way, you've gotten rid of all the restrictions, all the barriers. What are you going to do with it? So you've won the battle against yourself. Now do something with your life. Have the courage to do the things that you were meant to do. Um, you got to stand up. You have to fight through. Our nemesis in spine, by the way, was just gravity. Gravity is weighing us down, pushing us down into the floor, and then trying to stand up and be tall in an environment where gravity is heavy. Um, so again, these are things just uh, this is what the show meant to me. Um, and then at the end, it was supposed to represent that we never know when the end is coming. Like there's something very contrived and unnatural about. Um, I'll just use like drum corps as a analogy, like the company front finale, you know, fortissimo, batteries jamming, cymbals are crashing, and then show's over, right? That's not how our lives end. Our lives end mid-sentence. Our lives end like you're on the way to go get some, you know, milk, and you're done. And it's we never know when it's coming. So what better motivation than to make sure every second counts? And I know that sounds like, um, well, yeah, it's very easily said, very difficult to actually do. How many of us actually live our lives like every second counts and it could be our last? Um, but that's not a reason to not give it some credence and to think about it every now and then. I think a little reality check for all of us is healthy. So that's sort of the end of the show was supposed to say, is that, hey, you could be like, you know, having a great time, and then you don't know when somebody's got the clippers and boom, your lifeline's done. Um, and it might be in the middle of a sentence, and it could be any time. And I that's what the trilogy means to me, is it was a life worth living, a life that had meaning, a life that overcame the fear, and had the courage to do what they were supposed to do. Like there was a reason why that human was put on the earth, and they fulfilled um, their purpose. And now with that, it's um, oh, this is actually important to Spine, because somebody pointed out in the design team, we were having discussions that, well, isn't that, aren't you kind of going against what you just said with there is no company front? Like, well, how do you know when you've fulfilled your destiny? And then what's the rest of your life? Is it just whatever?
Right.
And so the response to that was, you never know what your best moment was until it's over. You don't know what that moment is. It's a secret until you're dead and gone. And then you can look back at the final product and say, that was what this person was put on the earth for. Like this whole process. And it doesn't have to be one event. It could just be a method of approaching life and dealing with people. It doesn't have to be a single event. It could be just the way that person lived. And but I thought that was super cool to think about it that way. It's like, it's a secret until you're no longer here. And then it's not for you to decide.
Right.
It's already done. So that's, we're getting super ridiculously abstract, but those are the things that we talked about and that we explored with that show. And that's what it meant to us, even though like you could sit in the audience and just see drums in a gym, and that's totally cool. But it was a special program for us.
How about with this year's program, Fall? Is this the start of a new trilogy? Is this a standalone thing? Will that reveal itself over the course of the next 18 months? What are your thoughts?
I've struggled with this
Okay.
because there was something really cool about realizing that Bloom was a trilogy in the middle of it. And I'm not sure if deciding that this is a trilogy right now is the right thing to do, because I don't know what the future holds.
Right. Chapter
This
one's
could
not
be,
complete.
yeah, this could be a you know, a sequelless show, or it could be, maybe it takes us 2 years to kind of complete this genre of an idea. Um, I don't know. I think I can say this. I like the concept of having things in this activity string together and relate to each other. There's something that transcends the recap and the competitive season when an idea spans multiple years. I like that. Um, but I like it too much to force it upon a show that doesn't want to go there.
Right. Let water find its, natural balance.
Yeah.
I like it. I like it. Hey, we're gonna head towards the end of this. We'll just do a couple of quick things to kind of wrap it up for everybody that's been joining us tonight. Mike, I did want to pick your brain on one thing, because you and I have known each other for a long time. I've been a huge fan of so many shows that you've had a hand in creating and giving life to over the years. But one of the things that I've always found most challenging is to try to stay, I don't know if relevant is the right word, but to stay fresh and cutting edge and involved in this activity, because as I've been in it for a long time now, I realize how easy it is to have that one great year, like that one idea that just crystallizes and comes through and is awesome. The most challenging thing in this activity is then to repeat that and to stay current and a topic of conversation, and something that's interesting every single year. So I'm wondering if you have any insight or any feeling as to what has helped you do that, since our activity has changed so much since 1996. What has allowed you to stay with that leading edge of the wave as it's kind of been crashing forward?
Wow. Uh, I have several different answers. One is take intelligent risk with young people. Um, having that 23-year-old tech that just aged out. Um, don't be afraid of that. Um, and surround yourself with people that believe in what you're doing, and you also believe in what they're doing. And I can only say what works for me. There's different methods of assembling a staff, but I don't necessarily think of it like, who's the best? Let's go get that person. Like, let's recruit and get the best. I want to work with people that actually get and believe in what we're doing, um, and that we don't have to be, uh, we're not looking for everyone to agree all the time, but at some point I think there's power in everybody being on the same page, and I think that's really important to keeping things, like you said, relative or relevant. Um, I could not do that by myself. I think being abstract, uh, being relevant in an abstract manner, like I think being genuine, being truthful, uh, being vulnerable, I think those things never go out of style. I think those are always relevant. The thing that I would fall victim to without all the awesome people I work with is, what the vocabulary today is. It's not just that it's different. Um, and I know every team's and every composer kind of uh, has their own vocabulary in which they work, which gives them their sound. But the possibilities now are so different than 10 years ago. I find myself almost like I self-edit while I'm writing when I have staff members telling me, don't edit. Write exactly. They can do it. We can teach them to do it. And I'm writing stuff. I'm like, there's no way they're going to be able to do this. And then they do it. And it's those moments are amazing. Like I can't believe some of the stuff um, that this activity has been doing in the last. I mean, what has it been, like maybe 5 years? If I had to put like if I had to put a marker of a generation, like, oh, this was this generation, this was this generation. I'd say we're kind of in this like 5-year generation thing going on right now. I mean, if you were to take that and put it back to the previous generation, I think we'd all be amazed. Like all the groups, like the whole finalists, independent world, even scholastic world, just the boundaries that we've, as an activity that we push past, I think is, um, I'm speaking for myself. I don't know how much, of the technical new stuff is being created by people my age. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe it is. I don't know. I might be out of touch there. But the the vocab and all of the just the crazy YouTube videos, like people just doing this stuff. I'm like, you know, I was making a joke the other day talking to some old friends. Like I was a line player. I was a line player. That means I didn't do any of that stuff. Um, but I think that's what you tap into to stay relevant. But you're not going to get those kids to show up at auditions if you're not doing something that's true and special and genuine. Um, like when I watch Mystique, I see Shane, along with the rest of the staff. When I watch RCC, I see Sean Vega and the rest of the staff and Jim Wonderly. Um, like you just see those people that create like their personal universe, and people are drawn to that. And I think just letting it happen, let the youth come in, hire the right people, make sure they're on board, and don't be afraid to embrace that after they've aged out. If they want to continue giving back and be a part of the program, then I think that's how you do it. Um, at least I don't know any other way to uh, to do it. And I can't say I've ever really thought about that as a thing. Um, like I don't sit and go, how can I be relevant? Um, my brain just never goes there. I mean, I know when I don't make finals, that's like, okay, regroup.
Message received. I got it.
You know what I mean? But I really don't sit and think, how can I be relevant? Like it just, I think just having that explore the spirit of exploration, like try the new stuff, grab that, you know, that kid in your line right now that's just blowing you away and goes above and beyond the call of duty. You know, when they age out, reach out to them, say, hey, do you want to come be a part of this? You know?
I think you touched on two things that are really valuable to me. One is continuing to be influenced by new things that you weren't previously. So that might be as easy as a new member in staff or an age out or somebody now having a role or a voice in the organization that they didn't have previously. So you're influenced by new ideas and new perspectives now, and by things that they're doing that you may not be as attached to without them being in the mix. And then the other thing that everybody that's watching that Mike touched on was it seems like Mike has this innate knowledge of not just his own group, but all of the groups around him as well. It's really easy and quick for Mike to reference other groups in the activity. They're like Mystique, that part feels like Shane right there, and this portion of RCC feels like Sean or feels like Jim in this portion. I think the more that you are a fan and a student of the whole activity and are paying attention to the current of everything that's happening, the easier it is to kind of keep your perspective broad. And that then influences the decisions you want to make as a creative person, as an artist, as somebody that's going on your own path. But I think for me, it was really telling when Mike said, the last 5 years or so feels like this generational kind of bubble. I'm putting words in your mouth now, but that speaks to an awareness of these 5 years feeling different than the couple years before that, and these 5 years having, it's not 5 years, it's 5 years in the activity, not 5 years in the history of one program or of one designer or something like that. And I think that keeps us all moving in the right direction and keeps the activity really healthy right now, because everybody's such a fan of everything else that everybody's trying and experimenting with, and trying to figure out. It's an awesome thing.
You know, one last thought on all of that, because you just reminded me in 2015, which is fairly recent. That's the year we didn't make finals. It was a blessing because I sat in a seat and watched whatever was it 30? Is it 15 and 15
Yep.
finalists?
Yeah.
So I watched 30 lines back to back of Scholastic World and Independent World, and I couldn't believe it. Like, where did has this been happening this whole time? Because I've been so busy, like especially in the mission years. Like I've got high school thing going on, logistics, or you know, everything is just owning your time. And then with when I was with RCC or Broken City later or OCI, um, I'm just running around, from one venue to the next, and man, I had Saturday off, and I got to see what this whole thing was all about, and not just the top three. I mean, everybody sees like the top three at some point, but I got to see, 15th place. And when I saw 15th place and it like floored me, and then I knew, like, I was literally sitting there going, yeah, we had no business performing on Saturday night. Like, that is legit. We got exactly what we deserved. Um, and I enjoyed the night, was blown away by it. I don't think I've ever done that before. in all the years. I've never sat and watched the top, because it used to be 12, so it used to be 24 um, of the world class programs, but to sit and watch all of them, and it just that was an education, and I'm glad it happened.
And on that note, it's all going down this year in a couple of weeks. World Championships is right around the corner, and if you're taking a group, I hope it's an amazing experience for everybody involved. If you're not taking a group, I hope you're going to be there this year in person to see it live and to have that same kind of experience that Mike was just talking about. Just get in the building, watch as many groups as you can, soak it up. If you've got a group that's there, that's the priority, of course. But whenever you're not competing, whenever you can, just get in there and be a fan of the activity and soak up all of this stuff. You learn so much by doing that. So I can't recommend that highly enough. Mike, before we sign off tonight, you have shared so much fantastic knowledge and given so many great perspectives, and I think anybody watching this is going to have so much to walk away with. I just wanted to find out if there was anything else on your mind, anything that we didn't touch on that you wanted to share, and if nothing comes to mind, that's fine. But before we go, I just wanted to find out if there was anything else that we didn't mention that you wanted to make sure to get out there.
I think the socializing with other staff members from other programs. Dayton's a great time to do it. Like you just said, we're busy, and some of us not only teach and design, but we're also responsible for the kids as far as getting them to all their locations and making sure they're fed. So not all of us have the freedom to just wander around after hours, but find out where those hangs are going to be. They're kind of in a different place every year, so I don't want to mention any locations, but yeah, reach out and ask questions and start conversations with staff members that you've never met, from programs that you admire. If you have genuine questions about somebody's program, or you just want to say, hey, I think you guys are great. I think that's a special thing in our activity, and we need to do more of it.
Yeah, on that note, I think it's one of the most special things about our activity is how open everybody is, how welcoming everybody is, and kind of this sense of fraternity across the activity where we're all connected. We all do this special, weird little thing that doesn't make sense to many others, but we all love it and we can't get enough of it. And when you do exactly what Mike said, when you socialize and walk up and introduce yourself to somebody you've never known before, who knows? It may influence your practice and your approach, but it might be the beginning of a lifelong friendship. I know some of my closest friends are my closest friends because they're people I looked up to and respected in this activity, and I wanted to know more about what made them tick and how they approached it. So you heard it all from Mike. He wants to see you in the parking lot. Walk up to him, introduce yourself to him, harass him, and pick his brain on things, and then that'll start a lifelong friendship. Mike, thank you so much for joining us tonight. This was great and fantastic. I appreciate you taking out some time and sharing all of your insight with us.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
And everybody else, thank you very much for spending a little bit of your Thursday evening with us, or if you're watching a recorded version later, thanks for spending some time with us. World Championships is right around the corner. Circuit Championships are going down, I'm sure, this weekend across most of the country. If not this weekend, then certainly next weekend. So best of luck out there. Continue to work really hard. Put everything you have into it. And maybe you can take a couple of the things that Mike and I talked about tonight about just talking to your ensemble, showing them what makes you tick, showing your humanity, being vulnerable to them, and use that as some motivation that kind of gets you over the hump and takes your program and your ensemble to even new heights over the next couple of weeks. It's going to be fantastic, and we'll see you all at World Championships here in a couple of weeks. Thanks, everybody.